Normally we would start off with our 100 by 100 millimeter hoop, but I'm going to be creating a simple satin stitched Year of the Snake design that is actually going to be on a sock, so it's going to be very small. So I'm going to go ahead and change my document properties to be, I want the width to be 40 and the height to be 60. And I'm going to go ahead and close that. That's going to be my design now. Now we can see a lot of these millimeter lines that we normally can't see. And I can press 1 to see it at its actual size. So to begin, I'm going to start off with my pen tool, and it's going to probably be set already to Bezier, so we want to select Create Spiro Path. And then I want to shift left click on this lime green and left click on my X so I have no fill and just a line. And then I'm just going to kind of start down here and draw a little tail. And from there I'm going to start, you can do smaller clicks. You can see how it allows you to create very smooth turns. So that's probably plenty. I'm going to shift click to get a straight line for my last path, and I'm going to hit enter, and that's my line. And from there I can click on my node tool and you can see that I can edit it, and it really has smoothed out all these little curves. So you can then adjust it depending on how you want to set it up. So this is a good time to go over, being able to see these lines and how important that is when you're creating satin stitches. So in order to see the path outline, it's this button here. You can turn that off and on. If you can't see these little arrows on there, then you need to go to Inkscape settings if you're on a Mac, or edit preferences if you're on a PC, and go to your settings and go to node tool and click this checkbox here that says always show outline, and you want to have it set to show path direction on outlines as well, and default is red, and I'm just going to leave it as red. So now we can see our directions, and if you don't want to see the handles, or if you do want to see the handles, that's this button here. So at various times you may want to see those or not. So I'm going to go ahead and just adjust this to be very snake-like, kind of be a snake path. Kind of point that way, and that's pretty good. So I'm gonna flatten this path now. So I'm gonna come over here to my path effects, which you can find under path effects, and I'm gonna select my line and I'm gonna flatten it. And it doesn't look like anything changed until you click off of it, then click on it again with your node tool, and now you can see there are a lot more nodes. So I'm going to go ahead and simplify that. You can do that by going to Path, Simplify, and that reduces the amount of nodes that we have there, which makes it a little easier to adjust now. I'm going to kind of go to my Smart smoothing tool there. And that looks pretty good. So the next thing we want to do is apply another path effect to our snake. And we're going to go to our path effects in this drop down menu, and we're going to go to Power Stroke. And now when we go to our node tool, you can see there's these extra little nodes here, and there's one in the middle and one on each end. And they're just this diamond shape, and they allow you to make it wider or more narrow in those places. And the reason why I like the power stroke as well is that you can change your end caps. So for example, since I'm stitching, my line is going this direction, this would be considered the start and this would be considered the end. So on the end, I want to change my end cap to be this peak type thing. And now when I widen it, you can see it comes to a point. That kind of helps start off our snake head kind of look that we're going for. I'm going to make this a little thicker. And then I'm going to flatten this again. So I'm going to go to my path effect, drop down here and select flatten. And I'm going to click off it and click back on it, and now you can see we have our two paths that go around to create this shape. And I'm going to Command L to simplify that. You can go path, simplify. And from here, we're going to create our satin stitch. What we need to do is make this an outline and not a fill. So we're going to go shift left on our lime green and left click on this X. So now we have an outline and no fill. And right click on this number here, and we're going to make that 1 millimeter. We start to get our two railroad tracks here for our satin stitch. And what I like to do then is make sure that my points kind of line up. I'm going to add a point. So that's kind of the tip of the, yeah, I think this is kind of, I need a point there. And then I can kind of create this snake head shape. I can kind of smooth those with my auto smooth tool button. And then for this, I just want it to be a straight point. The next thing I want to do is break these end points so I have two separate lines. So I'm going to go to this line and I'm going to go break path at selected node, and same with this one. And now I can change the direction of one of my lines because I have one going down and one going up. So I'm going to change this one to go up. So I'm going to go just select somewhere on that path and then go to path, reverse. And then I want to just make sure that my nodes line up, like with the satin lettering that we did. Or you can draw a path that is, you know, your rails on there. If that doesn't bother you, you can draw rails all over the place on here. But I like to just come in and double click, and this is when I like to have my handles off. Makes it a little easier to see what I'm doing. And you can delete points and just make sure they don't change the shape of your design too much. Because I have gotten carried away before deleting points and then the shape didn't quite look the same after it was done. I want to see my handles on that so I can line that up a little better there. Looks better. I'm going to turn my handles off. Delete that point. And I think that looks pretty good. And then we can select them, and if you added rails, you're going to want to hit Command K or go to Path, Combine, Once you've got it all adjusted and your lines are going in the same direction, you can Command-Shift-P. And you can see that it starts off with a running stitch. So we want to deselect that. And then it'll show you your satin stitch that you have set up there. So you can apply and quit that. So now we're going to create our flower. So if you worked on these basic satin shapes before, you will already have, for example, a basic satin leaf that you can just drop in here to make your flower with. But I'll go ahead and create it just in case you haven't seen that video. To create our flower, we're gonna grab our ellipse tool and we're gonna left click on our pink and we're gonna shift left click on our X because we want it filled with pink. I'm just gonna make it fairly round. You don't have to make it perfectly round. So you're gonna then duplicate that. And if I take both of these and come to my fill and stroke menu and reduce the opacity, you can see the overlap kind of creates this leaf shape. So I'm then gonna go to path intersection, and then that's our leaf shape, our basic leaf shape. So I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in here a little bit so you can see what's happening. And now I want to shift left click with my pink and left click so I only have an outline, and we'll make that 0.5 so you can see what's going on. Select your node tool. You want to select these two, the top and bottom point, and you want to break that path at selected nodes. Select one side and make that, I want these to stitch from the top to the bottom, so I'm going to change this one by going path, reverse path. Now they're going the same direction. So I can Command-Shift-P, deselect my running. You can see we have a satin stitch there. So I'm going to apply and quit. I'm now going to repeat this so that it goes all the way around. And there's a couple ways that you can do it, but I'm going to show you a new tool, a new path effect. So if you go to Path Effects and go to Rotate Copies, you can see that's not how we want it to look. So you need to select your node tool, grab this center point and bring it out to where it makes a flower. And I actually only want 5 petals because I know cherry blossoms only have 5 petals. And you can kind of try to center it. It kind of makes a star shape in the middle. So that works pretty good. And we're going to flatten that. Now we have one shape, and I'm gonna go Command-Shift-P, and you can see it's a mess. It knows that it's supposed to be a satin column, but it can't figure out where to start. It's not understanding that these are separate petals. So one of the downsides to using that rotate copies is that it messes up your original satin stitches that you had created. So you need to Command-Shift-K to break those apart. You now have to select those and Command-K to combine them. And select these, Command-K, select these, Command-K, select these, Command-K, and then these. Now when you select it, you can go Command-Shift-P, and it's going to stitch our snake, and it's showing us that it's stitching all of these petals. If we show our jump stitches, you can see it's jumping, but then it's stitching over that jump stitch. So that works fine. We can apply and quit. And then I'm gonna zoom out. Make sure you don't select your snake, just the flower, and I can group them, and that won't mess up the satin stitches. And now I can kind of take these and put these in different places. I can Command D to duplicate it. Or you can come up here to Edit, Duplicate, and you can, you know, vary them. You can make them a little smaller. Maybe make this one a little larger. You can put this one to the bottom so this snake stitches on top of it. And then that's pretty good. It's a very simple little design that will be very easy to stitch on a sock at this small size. So let me go to the actual size that it is. That's pretty much where I want it to be. I'm going to come over here to my layers and I'm going to select the entire layer. Come over here to Align and Distribute, which you can find under Object, Align and Distribute. And you want it to align that layer to your page. So you're going to align it in the center and the center. And then we can save that and export it as a PES. And I'll show you how to hoop your sock so you can stitch that out. Okay, so the way that you hoop this is you want to take your smallest hoop and take the ring and put it inside of the sock, and then decide which side you want to be on the inside. That's the side you're gonna stitch on. And then I just fit it on there, and then I pull this other side down and around the tightening rod, and then I really like that I can use scrap pieces of stabilizer for this, and it's one of the best ways to get rid of your sort of scrap stabilizers. And then I turn that over and it's ready to go in the machine and be stitched. So it's stitching the flowers, and you can probably see that it is actually trimming in between the petals. I don't really know how to change that. I think I have to change something on my machine settings. It's pretty sensitive. It'll trim even if I don't want it to. So here I am removing the stabilizer, and I really like that I can use these little hoops, scrap stabilizer, and stitch some cute socks. It goes by really fast because it's such a small design, and there's the set. And this design is very forgiving, so I didn't worry too much about placement. To create my complex shape, I'm just going to use these same design elements, but I'm going to make them larger. You don't want to do these complex designs on something this small because it's going to end up tearing your fabric because the stitching is going to be too close and tiny. So I'm going to go ahead and go to File, Document, Properties, and I'm going to change my width back to 100 and my height back to 100. And now you can see I have this larger hoop design. And at this point you want to save as, change the name, and hit save. And I had already done that. So now I'm going to take my snake design and I'm going to make it, I'm going to drag from the bottom and hold the control key. And I'm going to click on it twice and I'm going to rotate it a little bit. And this snake design is very forgiving, so it doesn't even, you don't have to maintain the aspect ratio. And I also like, you can stitch it in almost any direction and it still looks pretty good. So once I have that fairly large like I want it, I'm gonna stop right there. And I'm actually gonna just leave one of these flowers here as a template. So I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna fill it with gray and have no outline. That's just gonna be a template. We're gonna do a little bit more complex cherry blossom pattern there. So I'm gonna go ahead and zoom into that. So I'm gonna go to edit, duplicate. Now I have two groups, and you can hide one for now because we're gonna just use that as a layout guide. But I'm gonna take this second duplicate and I'm gonna go ahead and Command Shift G, and I'm gonna take this petal and I'm gonna go ahead and move it aside here. And I can go ahead and delete all these other petals. And I'm gonna kind of rotate it so that these points are on one of my guidelines. And kind of use the guideline here to help me out. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come up to my pen tool and I'm gonna just use regular Bezier line, and I'm gonna draw a quick triangle here, coming up a couple of millimeters. Come out 2. You can turn your snapping on if you'd like, but it's not necessary. So we're just gonna use this to cut a little divot out of our petal shape here. So I need to duplicate that triangle, and I'll do the other side in a second. So we just want to make sure we're selecting our petal and our triangle, and we want to go to path division. Yeah, and then we can delete that. So now we want to flip this on the vertical. So you can press this button here and flip it vertically. Again, you want to come in about 3. So we're going to select those 2. You're going to go path. You want to go to difference. Yeah. Okay. And that just cut that shape out of there. And that's what we want. We want this petal shape with these 2 little divots, because that's actually more how a cherry blossom petal is shaped. So what I want to do is make sure that I have my petal centered on one of these guides. And I'm going to kind of move these to 1 millimeter on each side. And I'm going to make sure this is coming down like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So deselect off your petal shape, then come and select your pen tool. Shift left click on the red, left click on the X, so we just have a red line. We're going to draw it right there. We're going to left, enter, or you can click left, and right mouse button. I now want to select my petal and my 2 lines and go to path, fracture, and now you can see that it has cut these into separate shapes. So I'm now going to select all of that, and I'm going to go shift left click with my pink. I'm going to make that 0.25, and I'm going to remove my fill. So I now just have these kind of weird outlines. The first thing I'm going to do is select this middle shape and hide it. You can actually select both of these, and with your node tool, select all of those points, and then you want to select this button here that says delete segment between 2 endpoints. So we just have these two V's. And then you want to do the same with this bottom portion. Delete the segments. And now we just have two V's. Go ahead and make your center part visible again. And you're going to select that, and with your node tool, delete the segment. Select those bottom two and delete the segment. And so for this, I'm going to select my node tool. You're going to see that these lines are going in opposite direction. It's going to be the main part of our satin, but then we want these to be separate satin shapes. And we want to set it up to where they all jump and stitch as one shape. So I'm going to select this side, and I'm going to do Command R. And I usually start from the top, and I like it to stitch down. And then I would like it to end over here and then jump to the top, stitch to here, jump to here, stitch the middle, jump to here, stitch down, jump across, and then stitch this part down. So we want this shape to stitch first, and it's going to stitch down. So we're going to select this V shape, and we're going to select that point, and we're going to break that point there. And then I want this to stitch down, so I'm going to select this line over here, and I'm going to Command R. So now both of those lines are facing downward. And then I want it to stitch this shape, this side, and I want this side to stitch down as well. So it's going to end here, it's going to jump, and it's going to stitch down. So let's make sure that that is ending over here. So I'm going to go Command Shift P, and I'm going to remove my running stitch. And my satin column is ending in that middle point. So if it's not, then you would need to change the order of your rails so that to the side that you wanted your stitching to start was on the bottom, and where you wanted it to end was on top in your layer panel. And that's how you can control where it starts and ends, is by changing the order of your rails. Then we're gonna, because it's gonna jump from there to there. We don't want it to jump from there to there, because that's gonna leave a line. So then we want to select this point and break it. And we would like to change the direction of this side. So I'm gonna select that line, Command R, and now both of my lines are facing downward. Then we're going to stitch this part, and with my node tool, I can see they're both going up. So I need to reverse both of those lines. So now they're stitching downward. And that means we want this side to stitch next. So we want it to jump to here and stitch downward. So let me select that bottom point, break the nodes, change the direction so it stitches upward of this line, Command R, and then we'll see where that ends up. Command Shift P, change it to a satin. It does end over here, so we're going to need to correct that, and I'll show you how to do that next. Apply and quit on this segment of the petal. Command Shift K, or you can go to Path, Break Apart. You can see now we have two segments, and the issue is that this object, if you look in your layers and you expand that group, is sewing before this path. So this is path 2 and this is path 35. And we want path 35 to stitch before path 2. So we're going to do that by coming up here in our layers and objects menu and selecting this down arrow. You can see now path 35 is below path 2. Then we can select both of those and hit Command K to combine them again. So make sure to hit apply and quit at that point. Then it's going to stitch this one, and since it ended here, we want it to jump to here and stitch downward, and then it should end about right here. So I'm going to go ahead and select A, and I'm going to break that node. And then I'm going to change the direction so that they're both going downward. Command R. And then we're going to Command Shift P. And we're going to change that to a satin stitch. And then we're going to apply and quit. So it's ending right here, basically. So the rest of our petals we want probably to come out this way. So let's change our order. We want this to stitch first, then this, then this, then this, then this. And then you want to go to Extensions, Inkstitch, Edit, Restack Objects in the order of selection. And now we're going to Command Shift P. You can see that that jump, it's ending here and then it's jumping to there, which is not a problem. It's jumping here and it's jumping there, and that's fine. And then at this point, you probably want to save. Really tedious. And you can try to find another way to get your stitches to recognize this V shape. Some people like to stitch a path through here, 3 separate paths. It's kind of up to you how you want to break it up. This is how I like to break it up. And it stitches out all as one petal without having to trim anywhere. So then we need to lay these out, and we don't want to lose all our work. So we just want to group them, and we want to turn back on that other group, that gray group. So I need to turn off my snapping, and I need to line this up here best as I can. Click on it twice and move your, with your rotate handle, you can see the center origin point. So then you can move that kind of to the middle there. Command D and turn it. Command D and turn it. Command D, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Turn it. Command D and turn it. And then, like I said, this gray one was just a guide. We can go ahead and select that and delete it. Okay, so now that I have them all laid out, I want to put them in the order that I want them. And remember, I want them to stitch this way. So I'm going to select this one, then this one, then this one, then this group, then this group. And I'm going to go to Extensions, Inkstitch, Edit, Restack in order of selection. And then I'm going to select, since they're going to stitch this way, It's going to stitch first, then second. This will be our last object to stitch. So I'm to double click and select this segment only. I don't want to select the whole shape and add a trim to that. Otherwise it's going to trim after each section. So I'm going to go ahead and select trim after and hit apply and quit. And I'm going to save again, Command S. I'm going to zoom out. Now I can select all of those, Command G, group them. Command Shift P to view our params. And I'm going to go jump stitch. You can see there's jump stitches, but they're underneath our stitching again. And then we're going to apply and quit, or you can just hit save at this point. We didn't change anything. So this is our flower now, our complex flower. And I'm going to just leave that set aside and we're going to work on our snake shape. So I'm going to unlock that guy and I'm going to select him. And remember, we have already 2 paths that we created to create our satin shape. And I'm just going to make this guy a little wider so that you can understand how great this is. This is wider now than 10 millimeters. So that's going to give you problems when you're stitching. Because remember, most machines will do like 10. Some only do like up to 7 millimeters wide. As well as this head part, you can see is a little wider than 10 millimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a really cool thing, which is that you can place a pattern under here and it'll create an embossed satin pattern. To do that, we need to place a center line in the middle of this snake. And I can show you an easy way to do that is to go to your path effects, which you can find under path and path effects. And then you can come to this drop down menu and you can go to Interpolate subpaths. You can see there are several right there. We just need 3, our 2 ends and our center line. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to flatten that. And then we're going to Command Shift K and break that up. And then you want to select your two sides without selecting that middle line. You want to go Path Combined or Command K and Command Shift P, and you're going to have to add your satin line in there again because we lost our parameters when we added the interpolated line and we broke it apart. So there's our satin stitch, and it thinks that it can stitch out these wider stitches, but once you got to your machine it would not be able to do that. So I'm going to hit apply and quit, and then I'm going to work on my pattern that I'm going to place on this center line, and it's just going to be a simple diamond shape. So I'm going to grab my rectangle tool and turn my snapping on. I'm going to shift left click on the green and left click on the X, so I just have a green outline. I'm going to draw a square there. Let's shift left click on my lime green, and I'm going to make it 0.5. Yeah, 0.5, 0.75, either one is good. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select my node tool. I'm going to go path, object path, and that way I have my nodes now. So now I'm going to select on this twice. Then I'm going to hold the control key while I turn so it snaps, and I can put it on its side like a diamond. And at this point, I want to click again, so I have my transform tool. Holding down the shift key in this middle design, you can see that I can have those shrink towards the center. And now I can take this entire shape and turn my snapping off and make it however big I'd like it to be. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go edit copy with that diamond selected. And I'm going to go to my path, my center path here. You can turn this eyeball on and off to make sure that's the one you have selected. And I'm going to go to my path effects, and I'm going to go to this drop down menu, and I'm going to go to pattern along path. And I want to change this to, I'm going to hit save right now because I had this crash on me before when I got to this point. So I'm going to change this to repeated, actually repeated stretched, and then select link to path in clipboard. And then I can change this to pattern as vertical. So now I can go to my node selection tool, and you can see I have this little tool here, and I can make that however wide I'd like it to be. And it's okay if it extends past your other line. This is just a pattern. Diamond here. So I'm gonna now select that pattern along path, and I'm gonna go ahead and flatten it. See if that works. There we go. And I'm gonna, with that selected, I'm gonna go to Extensions, Inkstitch, Edit, Selection to Pattern. And now I'm going to put that to the bottom and make sure your snake is on top. Select both of those and group them. So those are the requirements of making this work. To have your satin shape on top of your pattern, you have to have this set as a pattern. You can see there's a little icon down here that says this diamond path is our pattern. And you have to have them grouped together. So I can delete this other. And I'm gonna go ahead and select that group, and I'm gonna go Command-Shift-P. And you can't see any type of pattern here, but it is a satin shape, and that's all we can see. So the only way you can see this is by going to Command-Shift-Period, or going to Extensions, Inkstitch, Visualize and Export, Stitch Plan Preview. And I like to have my layer visibility unchanged, realistic, high quality. I like to render my jump stitches, and I like to override my last stitch plan and add and ignore layer command. So I'm going to hit apply, and you can see that there's my pattern on my snake, and it's not stitching out these parts that poke out of my satin stitch, and it runs along my design. And so what it has done now is create a smaller satin stitch within this wider satin stitch. So now I have no stitches that are, you know, gonna be longer than 10 millimeters. So that's how you can, you know, kind of get a wider satin stitch, and you can, you know, create something that looks more complex and is embossed with the design that you'd like on there. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that stitch plan preview, and I'm going to just Let's go ahead and see what this looks like in realistic view as well. And that looks pretty good as well. I'm now going to create some copies of this cherry blossom around my snake. So I'm gonna duplicate that group, and you can, similarly to our last design, you can rotate this and resize them and reorder them. There we go. So I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to just select off somewhere and Command Shift period to view my stitch plan preview. And I'm going to make my design layer visibility hidden, and I'm going to hit apply so that it's going to hide my design and just show my stitch plan preview, so you don't see these extra lines here. So you can see that pattern's not going to stitch out. So now I can save and export this, and it's ready to be stitched out. I'll go ahead and export this and stitch it out and show you what it looks like. So you can see here that the flower petals are still stitching out individually and trimming in between. That's just something my machine seems to do, so I wasn't getting the jump there that I wanted to make it go by faster. And then this is the final product. I stitched on this crushed velvet, and you can see here that I did a lighter color version, and I put just sticky stabilizer on this crushed velvet, and I'm gonna make some little pouches out of this. And I kind of liked a bigger flower. This was one that I previously created, and I think that I like the satin effect on the flowers a little better, but I made the snake too small on that one. So yeah, just looking at these a little more closely, I think I would have made the divots in the flowers a little bigger, but also made my snake wide like I did in the second one.